I never imagined I'd have to defend my own home from my own family. It happened on a quiet Saturday morning. I was halfway through cleaning my apartment when the doorbell rang. I assumed it was a package, so I unlocked the door without checking the peephole. Instead, my dad walked in. He didn't come alone. Right behind him were my mom, my older brother Michael, his wife Emily, and their 2 kids. Before I could even ask what was going on, Dad smiled like he was giving a grand tour of a house he had just bought. "Come on in," he said, waving everyone inside. I frowned. "Dad, what are you doing?" He ignored me completely. He pointed toward the second bedroom, my home office where I worked remotely 3 days a week as a software developer. "Michael," he said proudly, "this room would make a great bedroom for the kids." Emily stepped inside and looked around the room. "Oh, this is bigger than I expected." One of the kids ran straight to the window and shouted, "Mom, I want this room." I honestly thought they were joking. Then Dad looked at the master bedroom. "You two can take this one. It's got the attached bathroom." Michael nodded thoughtfully, as if he were comparing hotel suites. "I like it." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Dad looked surprised that I was interrupting. "You've got plenty of space," he replied. "Michael lost his job. They're getting evicted next week. They'll be living here for a while." "Living here?" I laughed because my brain refused to believe I'd heard him correctly. "You mean visiting?" "No," Dad said matter-of-factly. "Moving in." Emily was already discussing where to put the kids' bunk beds. Michael opened the closet in my bedroom and muttered, "This should be enough space for our clothes." Nobody had asked me a single question. Nobody had asked for permission. They had simply decided that my apartment belonged to them now. Every mortgage payment came out of my bank account. Every utility bill had my name on it. I had spent years working overtime, skipping vacations, and saving every extra dollar just to buy this place. Yet my own father stood in my living room acting like he had the authority to give it away. I took a slow breath. "No." The room went silent. Dad frowned. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean exactly that," I said. "No one is moving into my apartment." The disappointment on my parents' faces quickly turned into something far more familiar: anger. It was the same expression I'd seen my entire life whenever I refused to sacrifice something for Michael. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about an apartment. It was about 30 years of being expected to clean up someone else's mess. If you had asked my parents, they would have insisted they loved both of their sons equally. Reality told a very different story. Growing up, Michael was the golden child. He was 3 years older than me, charming when he wanted to be, and somehow always escaped the consequences of his own decisions. If he forgot his homework, it was the teacher's fault. If he failed a class, the school was too hard. If he quit another job after arguing with his manager, my parents would shake their heads and say he simply hadn't found the right opportunity yet. There was always an excuse. I didn't get excuses. I got expectations. When I earned good grades, my parents told me that was exactly what they expected. When I worked after school to save money, they reminded me that responsibility was part of growing up. If I wanted something expensive, I learned to pay for it myself because the answer at home was almost always, "We can't afford it." Somehow, they could always afford to help Michael. When he wrecked his first car, Dad helped him buy another one. When he maxed out his credit cards, Mom quietly paid them off. When he moved into an apartment he couldn't afford, my parents covered his rent for months instead of telling him to find a cheaper place. Every bailout came with the same explanation: "He's going through a tough time." I noticed something over the years. Michael's tough times never seemed to end because someone was always there to rescue him before he had to face the consequences. I took the opposite path. I went to college on scholarships, worked part-time, and graduated with as little debt as possible. After landing a software development job, I kept living modestly while my coworkers upgraded their cars and booked expensive vacations. I saved every bonus, every overtime check, and every tax refund. 5 years later, I bought my own 2-bedroom apartment. It wasn't luxurious, but every inch of it represented sacrifices I had made without asking anyone for help. My parents congratulated me, but their reaction felt strangely hollow. Dad looked around my apartment during the housewarming and joked, "You've got enough room for family if someone ever needs it." At the time, I laughed. I thought it was just another one of his harmless comments. Looking back, I realized he wasn't joking at all. In my parents' minds, nothing I owned truly belonged to me if Michael needed it more. They never saw my apartment as the reward for years of discipline. They saw it as the family's emergency backup plan. And judging by the way they had walked into my home that morning, they had already decided my opinion didn't matter. Standing in my living room while my family argued that I was being selfish brought back memories I hadn't thought about in years. Long before I owned this apartment, there was a time when I barely had enough money to cover rent. After graduating from college, I accepted an entry-level software development job in another city. The pay was decent on paper, but after taxes, rent, utilities, student loan payments, and groceries, there wasn't much left. My first apartment was a tiny one-bedroom unit above an aging convenience store. The walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor's television every night, and the heater seemed to quit whenever winter temperatures dropped. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. To make ends meet, I freelanced on weekends, fixed software bugs for small businesses, and spent evenings taking online courses to improve my programming skills. While some of my friends were enjoying expensive vacations or buying new cars, I stayed home, studying new technologies and building a portfolio that might someday lead to a better opportunity. There were nights when dinner was nothing more than instant noodles because saving even $20 felt important. I never complained. Every sacrifice had a purpose. Little by little, things began to change. My experience grew, my freelance clients increased, and eventually I earned a promotion that came with a meaningful raise. Instead of spending the extra income, I kept living as if I were still struggling. I saved every bonus, tracked every expense, and refused to take on unnecessary debt. It wasn't exciting, but it was steady. 5 years of discipline turned into the down payment for the apartment I now called home. That second bedroom wasn't some unused luxury my father imagined. It was where I worked remotely 3 days a week. It held my desk, computer equipment, shelves of reference books, and the career that had allowed me to build a stable life in the first place. Everything in that apartment represented quiet resilience rather than luck. No one had handed me the keys. No one had paid my mortgage. No one had stayed up late completing freelance projects or spent weekends learning new skills to earn promotions. I had built this life one careful decision at a time. And now the very people who had watched me struggle without offering help expected me to surrender it all, because Michael had once again run out of chances. For the first time in my life, I knew I wasn't going to give in. The argument ended the only way it could. I told everyone to leave. Dad folded his arms. "We're not going anywhere until we work this out." "There isn't anything to work out," I replied. "This is my apartment." Michael sighed dramatically, as if I were the unreasonable one. "You're really going to let my kids be homeless?" I looked him straight in the eye. "No. You're the one who made choices that put your family in this situation. Don't blame me for them. That only made my parents angrier." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe we've raised someone this selfish." I almost laughed. Raised? They hadn't helped me buy this apartment. They hadn't paid my mortgage. They hadn't even helped with the down payment. Yet somehow I was expected to sacrifice everything because Michael had once again reached the end of someone else's patience. When Michael carried 2 suitcases into my hallway anyway, I realized they had never intended to take no for an answer. I pulled out my phone. Dad scoffed. "What are you going to do? I've asked you to leave." "You don't mean that." "I do." When I started dialing, Emily finally looked nervous. "Michael, maybe we should go." Dad stepped closer. "You wouldn't call the police on your own family." I looked at him calmly. "I've warned all of you." A few minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. The conversation was short. I showed my identification, the property documents, and utility bills with my name on them. The officers explained that everyone who wasn't authorized to live there needed to leave immediately. Dad argued. Mom cried. Michael insisted this was a family misunderstanding. The officers weren't interested in family politics. To them, it was simple. The homeowner had asked unwanted guests to leave. Watching my parents walk out of my apartment in complete silence should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt heartbreaking. Not because I regretted my decision, because I finally accepted something I had spent years trying to ignore. They had never come to celebrate my success. They had come to claim it. Over the next several weeks, my phone exploded with missed calls, emotional voicemails, and long text messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Some accused me of abandoning family. Others insisted I should be the bigger person. A few even suggested I apologize to my parents for embarrassing them in front of the neighbors. Then, one evening, an unexpected call changed everything. It wasn't my parents. It was a lawyer. And what he told me made me realize the apartment had never been the real reason my family suddenly wanted me back in their lives. The lawyer asked if I could meet him the following afternoon. Curiosity got the better of me, so I agreed. When I arrived at his office, I immediately recognized the people already sitting in the conference room. My parents. Michael. Emily. No one looked happy. The lawyer introduced himself and explained that he represented the landlord who owned Michael's former apartment building. He slid a thick folder across the table. I believe everyone should hear the facts together, he said. Dad leaned forward confidently. This whole situation started because my son wouldn't help his brother. The lawyer didn't react. Instead, he opened the file. The eviction wasn't caused by a temporary job loss. He handed everyone copies of several documents. The first showed months of unpaid rent. The second listed repeated complaints from neighbors about loud parties and property damage. The third confirmed that Michael had received multiple written warnings long before he lost his job. Then came the final document. It stated that Michael had been dismissed from his previous employer after an internal investigation found he had repeatedly violated company policies. While no criminal charges had been filed, the misconduct was serious enough that he was terminated for cause. I looked at my parents. You knew? Neither of them answered. The lawyer continued. Our client attempted to arrange payment plans several times. Every offer was ignored. He placed printed emails on the table. Some were from the landlord. Others were from my father. One message stood out. It was written weeks before they showed up at my apartment. Asterisk, don't worry. My younger son has a 2-bedroom apartment. We'll move Michael's family there until everything settles down. Asterisk, my chest tightened. They hadn't made a desperate decision that morning. They had planned it. Without asking me. Without even telling me. Dad finally spoke. We thought you'd understand. No, I replied quietly. You assumed I wouldn't say no. The room fell silent. For years, I had believed my parents simply struggled to set boundaries with Michael. Now I understood the truth. They weren't reacting to his problems. They were actively enabling them, expecting everyone else to absorb the consequences. The lawyer closed the folder. As far as my client is concerned, this matter is finished. Mr. Michael's outstanding debt remains his responsibility alone. No one argued. For the first time I could remember, there was no excuse left to hide behind, no story to rewrite, and no one else to blame. The evidence had said everything that needed to be said that I left the lawyer's office feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because I had won. There was nothing satisfying about watching my own family fall apart. The real victory was finally seeing the truth without making excuses for it. For most of my life, I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed patient enough, or sacrificed enough, my parents would eventually treat me the same way they treated Michael. That day, I accepted they never would. And strangely, that acceptance brought peace. Over the following months, I made a few quiet changes. I changed every lock on my apartment. I updated my emergency contacts. I installed a better security system and never gave anyone in my family another spare key. Then I did something that had always felt impossible. I stopped answering guilt-filled phone calls. I stopped replying to messages demanding favors. I stopped trying to explain my boundaries to people who had already decided they didn't matter. Eventually, the calls became less frequent. Word spread through the family that I wasn't changing my mind. Some relatives reached out later to apologize after learning the full story from the lawyer. Others never contacted me again. I wished them well from a distance. As for my parents, I heard through relatives that they finally stopped covering Michael's debts after realizing every rescue only led to another crisis. Whether they learned that lesson out of regret or necessity, I honestly didn't know. By then, it no longer mattered. Life inside my apartment became exactly what I had worked so hard to build. Peaceful mornings, quiet evenings, a home office where I could focus on the career that had given me independence. For the first time in years, my home truly felt like a sanctuary instead of something I had to defend. Looking back, I realized my apartment was never the real issue. It was a symbol. The moment I refused to give away my home was the moment I finally stopped giving away my self-respect. Sometimes the strongest act of love isn't sacrificing everything for people who refuse to respect you. Sometimes it's protecting the life you built, even when the people asking you to give it up share your last name.